increase our faith. Maybe some of you are saying that in your own heart this morning. Maybe that's part of why you came to worship. I think it's helpful to look at what happened just before this disciple shouted out, "Increase our faith, Lord." And that is that Jesus has asked them to do, just two simple things. The first one being to take care of, not forget, even those on the margins, even the smallest, even the people in community who don't offer anything. Care for them, tend them, the little ones. And the small task of always forgive. Always. Every time. Always. Every time. Again and again and again. So you're going to take care of everybody, even the people that you may not like, even the people that frustrate you, even the ones that you trip over because you forgot that they exist. And you're going to constantly forgive. That's all. So no wonder this disciple decides to scream out, "Lord, increase our faith." And then Jesus goes on to say, no, this is not about increasing anything. And part of me laughs about this and thinks, don't you know some of the other disciples were sitting there going, "Don't ask him questions. He's just going to give us a lecture we don't understand. Why did you ask him to increase our faith?" And he kind of does. He says it's not about getting more faith. It's about understanding what faith really is. Marcus Borg, in his book, The Heart of Christianity, suggests there's two different kinds of faith. The first one is a faith that lives in our intellect. And it's a faith that talks about facts and things that we can prove that we believe, statements. My faith is built on these facts that I understand and know. Borg goes on to suggest that the problem that rubs up against that kind of faith is that, first of all, what if you change your mind? What if you're introduced to a new set of theological principles, or you have a different understanding of this particular Bible passage? Now what happens? I'm sure, like me, you've heard the phrase from people, "I lost my faith." Because having a faith that simply lives in our intellect only serves us for so long. It might lead to great education, but it doesn't lead to much transformation. And that's what this disciple is crying out for. And if you're living in the same world I'm living in right now, a lot of us are crying out for something more, for a transformation. Isn't it interesting that even in biblical times, they're talking about taking care of the other and forgiving, and now a million years later, we're doing the same thing? Still, same issues. So having a faith that is only about facts that we understand doesn't seem to be what Jesus wants us to do. Instead, maybe he's about the second kind of faith that Borg suggests, which is a faith that lives in our hearts. It goes deep down. It's not that the facts that we believe don't matter, it's just they only get us so far. So the faith that's going to transform us and give us what we need to actually live as children of God lives in our hearts and has three kind of qualities about it. The first one is that it is a faith that is built on radical trust in God. Radical trust. And I say radical because we can't really see it. And we have to completely trust that God will be there. And I think that God must have radical trust in us too, to believe that we're going to show up and be there. So faith is built in radical trust in God and God in us. And it's built on a faithfulness, a kind of commitment that goes to the cellular level. I trust you, God, that you're here. That is one part of my faith. And I commit to show up to this relationship, just as I know you always do. That kind of faith. And then the third is kind of what happens when we begin to trust and we begin to commit and we begin to live in this flow of how God has put the world in order. Our vision of how the world is changes. no longer does the world only look like a hostile, fearful, divided, broken, hate-filled place, which it can look a lot of the time, but it looks like a place where love is alive, where joy and glory are shown, and where hope continues to be the heartbeat that moves the planet, the world along. That kind of faith, trust, commitment deep into the cellular level, and a worldview that says hope, God, love, life is possible. David Freihoff, who is an Episcopal monk, even suggested when he was reflecting on this particular gospel that we can take this into practice whenever we say the creed, right? We begin the creed, we believe. Now, he would suggest we're not just talking about we believe in facts, but we believe the credo, the Greek, we give our life to. We give our heart to. We believe, not just intellectually, but we give, we commit to. And then if you read the creed, you know what it is? What does it describe? Not a bunch of doctrine, really, not believe these particular bullet points. It describes a God that is in relationship, a God that created, a God that lived here with us, and a God that connects us, that relates to us. In the creed, we are committed to a relationship. It's the same kind of faith, isn't it? So I began to try to think of examples of this, of how I've seen this. If this is all really true, where is it happening? In my own family, I saw this happen when my mother decided to create this. I've told you about the non-for-profit she created, and we had a summer camp for several years in the inner city of Little Rock. And when my mom first began this, she wasn't looking to do that. In fact, she was going to go work at a different camp, in sort of a Cadillac kind of fancy camp, and every summer, or at least at our Dawson church camp. But the summer before she was planning to leave, or the year before she was planning to leave, I was in, I think, 6th grade, and she had been the leader of our Girl Scout troop, and we were about to go off to middle school. And one of the 4th grade girls came up to my mom, very little, poor African-American girl, came up to my mom and at school one day and said, "Would you be my Girl Scout leader?" And so my mom said, "Sure." So she said, "Tell your friends." And the first meeting they had, 45 little girls showed up to be in the troop. 45. And so my mom had a new Girl Scout troop. I was now off in middle school, and so here she was, my brother's still at elementary school, and she was now for these 45 children. And they went on different outings and scouting things like you do, and she remembers when they were about to go on a big hike, and my mom bent down to tie her designer North Face or LL Bean hiking boots she had on, right? And the little girl next to her, the same one, Mom noticed her shoe that was a tennis shoe with holes in it and didn't fit well, was untied, and so she began to tie that shoe, and she heard, "You have to do something about this." And later that year, as the scout troop was ending, the mothers came to my mom and said, "You can't stop this. Can we do something else?" And my mom said, "Yes, we'll have a camp." So she got then, and it just came out of her mouth. And now she went to our priest and said, "I've made this commitment to this Cadillac fancy camp where I'm going to be the director. And I would have to give up all the work I do with our Episcopal church camp, but I think this is what we need to do." She didn't know what it was going to look like. She didn't know how it was going to work. All she knew is that this kind of faith moved her into a type of servant lifestyle. And then, the pieces began to work. Suddenly, other church groups in the inner city of Little Rock, their leaders came forward and said, "We want to be a part of this." My mom began to take grant writing classes and learned how to run a non-for-profit. And that experience in that camp became a central part of my family's life. It made no sense that this upper middle class white lady raising children would start this huge organization that would have changed so many lives. It seemed impossible. And yet, it was just a little seed, and the mulberry tree was moved. I found another example that I'd like to read to you. Again, David Vryhoff offered this story. He stumbled upon a study by a Harvard psychologist named Robert Coles, who spent some time really fascinated by these 6 little girls who were part of the desegregation in New Orleans. This caught my attention, being a Little Rock Central High graduate myself. And he got very close to Tessie and her grandmother Martha, whom he describes as being a stately woman with a big voice and known to say, "Lord Almighty," after certain exclamations and things she would say. And so one day he was at their home and they were having breakfast, and Tessie decides, "I don't think I'm going to go to school today." And who could blame her? I mean, she had to be brought in 6 years old by federal marshals and people yelling hateful words to her. I don't even know how she would understand that. But here's what her grandmother said. "It's no picnic, child, I know that, going to that school. Lord Almighty, if I could just go with you and stop there in front of that building and call those people to my side and read to them from the Bible and tell them, remind them that he's up there, Jesus, watching all of us. It don't matter who you are and what your skin color is. But I stay here and you go. So I'm not going to tell you that you should go, because I'm here and I'm watching television and eating and cleaning up things while you're walking by those folks. But I'll tell you, you're doing them a great service. You're doing them a service, a big service. You see, my child, you have to help the good Lord with his world. He puts us here. He calls us to help him out. You belong at that school. And there will be a day when everyone knows that, even those poor folks. Lord, I pray for them, those poor, poor folks out there shouting their heads off at you. You're one of the Lord's people. He's put his hand on you. He's given a call to you, a call to service in his name. There's all those people scared out of their minds. And by the time you're ready to leave that school, they'll be all calmed down and they won't be paying you no mind at all, child. I guarantee you, that's how it will be. And with that, Tessie put her breakfast dishes in the sink and went and got her bags to go to school. Did you see her grandmother's faith? Trust at a cellular level of faithfulness, and a vision that hope is alive even now. A faith not simply built on information, but that transformed her. This is the faith we are called to have. This is the faith we are crying out for Christ to increase in us. That little bitty faith might actually move the mulberry trees of anxiety and pain and fear and hatred out of our hearts, so that we might grow and the kingdom